Hello everyone, I'm very sorry for the big delay between the videos. The job calls out and I decided to make this very quick and little video just to post something, so there's no script or anything. I just decided to start doing something right away. So I'm very sorry if I get off track, but I thought it was important to at least do something, and I decided that I'm going to start, like I did something similar in the video before. I'm going to start describing a little bit the tools we can find here, and especially how they are related to the workflow we're going to do. So for starters, I'm going to try to clear out that there are like two main ways of using CLO. One of them is purely like a designer or fashion designer or graphic designer tool, where you start from a base and you modify the base a little bit, or maybe you just deal with graphics, colors, outfits, and how they combine to each other. And there's some tools just for that. And then the other way, which would be from zero up, which is how to create new patterns from zero and how to control them and things like that, which it's what the pattern makers do. The pattern makers usually use other types of programs such as Gerber, which is specialized just in pattern making. And CLO has some tools that are just to pattern making. But CLO, it's a big program that has it's a suite, so you can do everything from pattern making to fashion design and graphic design. Well, graphic design is done outside, but you use those graphics here and you can make lookbooks and stuff like that inside the program. So starting from the ground up, the basic tools that the pattern makers need to use are first, the tools to create the pattern. I know that in a lot of manuals they start with this kind of tools, with the transform and edit pattern, but without a pattern you cannot edit anything. And most people, when they first start in CLO, they don't have anything. When we give our courses, we have material already open for them, but for people that open this program for the first time, it's usually like very difficult to begin with, just like old Photoshop versions where you would not even know how to create a new project. So the first tool and the main tool that we are going to see right away is the Polygon Tool. With this tool, we can just create any kind of shape, just like in Illustrator. And there are a couple of modes. If you click and hold, you can see the three different uses of this tool. They work in a little bit different way, but it's the same concept. So you are going to create a closed shape that you are going to be able to use as a pattern. So the Polygon Tool, you just place points in space in the 2D view, and you're going to create that way your pattern. If you see this star shape coming up, that's because just like in Photoshop and other applications, if you press Shift, you are going to bring up these rulers that you can use to move your point along one of the axes or in 45-degree angles. And also you will see that if I don't do that and I start moving freehand, you get these lovely pink lines that are going to guide me to know if I'm going straight or if I am at the same level or something else. You will see that once I get close to that point, the program is telling me that, okay, if you click there, you're going to be exactly the same level. So that way I can click once and click again. And even though that useless point is there, I know that if I delete this one, I'm going to have a perfect square. Now, if you click there in the Polygon Tool, you get these other options, the rectangle, linear, ellipse. These two work, These work in a similar way. Just like in Photoshop, if you select rectangle, if you click and drag, you're going to create a rectangle, and the same with the ellipse. And again, just like in Photoshop, oh my God, get away. Just like in Photoshop, if you press Shift, you are going to be scaling it proportionally, which is very handy. One thing you can do to be more methodical, like pattern makers, is click once and you're going to bring up this menu to create the rectangle where you can specify the numbers that the new pattern should have, so that you can specify, for example, how long your piece has to be if you are using standard measurements for your new piece. You can also do more than one if you're doing stuff like loops for the belt or for the waistband. You can use these to make more than one, but it's so easy to copy and paste that I barely never use it. With the ellipse, it's just the same. Now, of course, after creating a pattern, even if you have used many points, at some point what you're going to want to do is modify what you already have. So to do that now, I think it's a good time to present the other tools that you're going to use to modify this pattern. Because if you don't have anything, what's the point? So you have the first one, the transform pattern tool. With this one, you can just move things around and scale the entire shape proportionally. One thing to note is that all the arrangement in the 2D, it's completely irrelevant to the 3D. This is more for us to have things organized and put them in a correct order. We can, of course, synchronize this arrangement to 3D by clicking on this icon here, which is reset to the arrangement. This is going to synchronize all the arrangement we have here in the 3D. If you do that, it's going to copy this. We'll see the rest in the future. And again, this is not going to affect how this behaves. So if I rotate this, you will see that I can rotate it freely. But again, if you use your intuition and you press shift, you will see that it snaps to 45-degree angles and 90-degree angles. Now, if I do this, you will notice again that the 3D view doesn't change because this is just for us. If you want to be more precise with your rotations, it's very easy. You can right-click on any of the patterns, and underneath all this giant menu with a lot of things that are very confusing, you have the rotate menu. Here you can find these nice options to rotate it clockwise or counterclockwise, either 45 or 90-degree angles. Now, one thing to note is that those rotations only work, they work from the starting point. That is, if I screw up in the beginning and I rotate this like so, if I now try to even rotate it by hand using shift, it's not going to snap it to the vertical again. It's going to start from this position because the computer is dumb and doesn't know. And the same goes if you use these rotate options. It's going to rotate it from this starting point. Now, the way to correct this, if you ever find yourself in trouble, it's using the other options in rotate. If you right click, you will see here underneath rotate, you can find this x-axis and y-axis and parallel to. You can use this to straighten up everything that you have. If you use the x-axis, you are going to rotate things based on the x-axis. So let's see, if I click here, now it says select the line to rotate. So I'm going to tell the program, all right, I want this line to be aligned with the x. So this way I can again have this completely straight. Oh, come on. The same goes for the y-axis. It's just going to align it in the vertical. Now the other option that you see here, the parallel to, you can use it to rotate something parallel to another piece. So if I select this, the computer is going to ask me which line do you want to match it with. So I can tell the program, right, I want my piece to be aligned to this one. And then I want this line specifically from this pattern to be aligned. And there you go. And now it's going to be completely aligned. This can be useful for various reasons, but I must confess that I barely use it. Now, I've said that moving stuff using the transform pattern tool doesn't affect the 3D, and that is not exactly true. If we modify the this transform pattern thing, of course, this is going to affect the pattern because we're actually changing the shape of the pattern. In the same way, there's a couple of options here underneath rotate, the flip horizontally and vertically, which sound like they're going to only flip stuff. The thing is though that in the 2D you're always facing the good side of the fabric. So when you actually flip it, you are not looking at the other side. You're just flipping the shape. So when you do that, you will notice that the 3D shape also changes. It's more like changing the shape to have a mirror or something like that, rather than actually flipping something. That's why they change. Also, again, if you change if you change your pattern, it's going to, of course, change. One thing to note is that you'll notice that when I click here and move it away, I am only moving one side of the pattern. If you ever want to move both sides at the same time, you have to double click on the pivot point, otherwise it's inactive. So when you double click, it's going to turn orange, and this way you can scale things at the same time. Also, you will be able to scale everything using the pivot point. Otherwise, it's gray and it's not active. One thing to note that I see people get very lost, when you hover over the pivot point, it turns blue. That's just because it's highlighted. So in order to know if it's orange or gray, you have to always take your cursor out. Otherwise, you won't know, because now it's gray, now it's blue. I double click, and if I don't move my mouse, I won't see that the color has changed. So I see a lot of people getting very confused with this. It's a small thing, but it happens. Now, of course, this is a very this is nice and dandy to change the shape that we already have. But what about changing completely the shape of this one? Well, for that, we have to, of course, go to our edit pattern tools. With the edit pattern, we are able to move the points that we have created. And not only the points, CLO, it's very differentiates a lot the segments and the points. They actually behave the same, but CLO, it's very adamant on making us know that we are clicking into one or the other. The thing is that clicking on the lines is like clicking in the 2 points. They behave the same, although it's not the same. So the menus can change and the behavior can be a little bit different. Clicking a point and dragging it, just like in if you're dragging your icons in desktop, it's just this easy. So you click and drag and the point is going to move. I think most people have figured out that already, even watching any videos. And if you click on the line, you can move the entire line. One thing to note is that if, again, you want to be precise because you want to do proper patterns, if you want to move this point in a very precise way, you first have to click and drag and start the movement. Otherwise, it doesn't work. You have to start the movement. This is very important because otherwise CLO doesn't allow you to do so. So once the movement has started, you see this dotted line that's telling me you can see the distance that I've moved from this point. Once I do this, if I right click on the mouse or I click command on max, you will get presented with this menu that you can use to specify the distance you want that point to move. So if you want to move only 1 centimeter, there you go. You can do this. And also you can specify if you want the point to move only horizontally or vertically. Of course, if it's moving at 1 centimeter to the X and 1 to the Y, it's telling me that it's actually moving 1.45 from the starting point. Now you can click OK, and that's it. This works also for lines in the same way. You right click and you're going to get this distance. The only difference is that because it's not a point, it's going to preserve the angle that you started. So be careful with this because you cannot change it. So if you want to move this vertically or horizontally, you should use Shift so that it's aligned to one of these axes. This shift thing works very well, but sometimes you will have to be zoomed in. Otherwise, depending on the number of patterns that you have, these pink lines can get in the way. And sometimes it doesn't pick up one of these lines. So just be mindful of that. Another easy way of changing the shape, it's by right-clicking on the lines. Because it's a line and has a certain length, you can change the length of the line by going to this menu. And you can specify how much you want to change it. So it's telling you right now that it's 45.81 centimeters. So you can be You can click 50, and now you can specify to which point is going to be extended to. You can extend it on the start, the end, or both. Another very curious way to use these the edit pattern tool is if you click and go to the transform point segment. Now, for a long time, me and my colleagues, we had no idea what this was, but we finally discovered what the intention is. So here's the problem. If I select 2 points, let's say these two, you, of course, this to me is intuition, but if you want to select more than 1 point, you press shift and that's it. So if you select 2 of these points, you will see that there's no way for me of having a transform tool. I can't, like if I select the transform pattern tool, I do have this transform cage that I can use to expand these 2 points, but once I start selecting 2 points, I just can't. Now, this alternative mode deals with this issue. If I go here, I can select both points, and you will see that now I get this transformation cage, which I can use to transform them around. Now, you'll notice that this doesn't seem very useful, like, oh, I'm doing the same as before. I'm just moving the point to one of the sides. What's the point? Remember that by default, the pivot point, it's disabled. So if you hover over it, and when it's blue, if you double click, now it's active, and this means that I can expand them at the same time. So this is very useful when we are dealing with stuff that we want to transform proportionally to both sides. That's usually the case when we are doing sleeves and things like that. We want to make them narrow in the wrist at both sides at the same time. So here's how you can do it. Of course, with this tool, you can basically do the same thing as with the transform pattern. You can select all the points and transform them at the same time. Again, with the double click thing, you can make them, you can transform them proportionally. Now, it's very tempting for me to go on with all the tools that we can see for pattern making, because we have a bunch of them and they get added as time goes. But we're going to just have a look at a couple of them and then leave it there so that the video is a little bit short, because with the basics, you can start doing most of the patterns. But one thing you really need to have some nice patterns, it's, let me just get rid of this and show you. Wait, I'm clicking escape. Escape doesn't work. So let's say I create these sort of sleeve pattern. Now it's cool with most of the tools that I have presented. Usually it's enough to do something like this, and most of the patterns that you will need. However, there's one thing that we must do. Most patterns are not this cubic like the Cybertruck of Tesla. They should have smooth curves. So to do that, it's one of the easiest thing you can do. It's using the edit curvature tool. There are more than one way of having curvature, but this is the easiest one. It's a simple way to add simple curvature to your patterns. This works very simply by clicking, and then you select the line you want to curve. You click and drag the thing out, and that way you're going to have a curvature. Depending on where you tilt your mouse, you're going to have more pronounced curve on one side or the other, but you can just click whatever you want because you can edit this curvature afterwards. So let's say that I decide that this is going to be my curvature, and let's say that I screw up and make this this ugly shaped. Now, no matter, because I can fix this afterwards. This tool, what it does, it converts the lines to be Bezier curves. Bezier curves have two handles on each side that guide the curvature of the line or segment in CLO. So if we go again to the edit pattern and we click on any of these points, you will see this little handle that now appears. Of course, it's only on one side because we have added curvature just to the segment. This one doesn't have, so the Bezier puller here is just on one side. If you click here, you will see that you have two. Now, using this handle, by clicking and dragging, you can specify again the curvature you want to have. And this way, you can make a line to be completely tangential. to be a tangent of the other one. So this one was to offshoot, so I can just pull it down and move it this way, and that way I have better curvature. Well, that one was really ugly, but you get the point. Now this tool, you can only have very simple curves like this one. And a lot of sleeves have double curvature like this. We're going to get to those tools in the future. For now, I think this is enough. And I'm going to post this video just as is with this basic and quick tools, and thoroughly explained most of the tools. There's not much into it. And however, if anyone has any suggestions about things that I've missed in only these simple tools, or questions they have, or how to do something or another, I'm going to start the next video probably by answering those questions if there are any, and then I will continue with the rest of the tools that we need to create the patterns. Afterwards, when we cover those tools, I'm going to move on to the next stage of the process of a garment, because I'm going to make this section to be explaining most of the tools and where do they fit in the production context. So this is mainly for pattern makers. Also designers must learn how to move the points around, because sometimes the designs require some changes in the pattern. Now, depending on the company, they don't want the designers to touch anything about the patterns, which is completely understandable. But some companies trust the designers and they let them change a little bit about these patterns, because after all, then these patterns go back to the pattern makers to get fixed and be sent to the supplier. So these simple tools, I'm going to send this video because I think I should get again into producing them, even if they are super short and dumb, because little by little, I think I'm going to cover everything I know. So yeah, here we go. Thank you very much. And I hope that next time we see more exciting stuff.